Well, hello and welcome back once again to In the Growth Space. My name is David McGlennon. I'm your host and growth coach, and I am once again grateful that you're back with us. And you know, we've been having some really great conversations over the last few weeks, and I have some great conversations that are recorded and upcoming for some upcoming podcast episodes. But today we have a conversation with one of my good friends, Shelley Brown. And she is not only a good friend, but she is also releasing a new book titled Weird Girl Adventures. And we talk a little bit about the book, but she also talks about how to really embrace our weird. She has some really great thoughts and experience around her own personal growth and really allowing yourself and your people that are in your organization, if you're the leader, just to be their authentic selves. She's funny, she's witty, she's got some really great insights on discovering your weird or your unique abilities and your uniqueness. Now, listen to how she defines weird and what she has to say about it. It is so good. And I really think that in this episode, you're going to discover how your own unique weird, as Shelley talks about, can be used to serve others and to really help others to grow. I'm really excited for you to step into this episode and this conversation. So let's get into that right now. Well, Shelley, welcome to In the Growth Space podcast. Really excited to have you on today.
Thanks, David. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, man, it's my pleasure. I can't wait to get into this conversation because you and I met on LinkedIn and we became fast friends, and I really enjoyed your story and I've really seen your growth path over the past, couple of years, I guess. And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Gosh, where do I start? Well, I think the most relevant way to start is to share that I'm just like a lot of people. I spent decades in the corporate world and felt very often like a square peg in a round hole. And there were very few times during my career where I did feel like I was supported to be who I am and really thrived. And a couple of years ago, I decided to leave the corporate world after what I would consider my 19th nervous breakdown.
Oh, man.
Yeah, total stress. Amygdala hijack stress. Like you, I was an ultra athlete. And besides being a square peg in a round hole, my vertebrae collapsed. And I had a year with a chronic injury. So I started out worried and then I got thrown into fight or flight. And that kind of affected me in my career. And I left the corporate world because I discovered mindfulness and not in a sit in your Lululemons cross-legged with your fingers like this, but more like being the driver of my own awareness, which really helped me, changed my life. So I decided that I wanted to learn how to bring that practice to other people in a way that made sense for me. So around and I really focused on the events and hospitality industry where I'd come from. And then we all know after COVID.
Yeah, that was definitely a tough business to be in during COVID, right?
Yes. And still a tough business to be in. And I'm praying for the renaissance for the meetings, travel and hospitality industry. Yeah. But I did what I would call a pirouette because nobody likes to use the overword P word.
I know. I'm with you. I love it. I like the pirouette. I like that a lot.
Technically it's a pirouette with a tour jeté because a pirouette is like spinning and coming right back to where you are. But a tour jeté involves movement. So it's a pirouette with a tour jeté, technically speaking.
I love it. I'm going to have to make sure that my daughters listen to this episode because they're both dancers. And my oldest daughter was a ballerina. So she probably knows exactly what that is.
Yeah, so I retired that word.
Yes, that's great. I know you wrote a book that's coming out very, very soon. I'm kind of curious about what was it that took you to writing and why become an author? Because that was something pretty new for you, wasn't it?
Well, that's a great question. So my book comes out June 22nd, and I kind of call it the unhow-to book because it's really just the experience of being a human being. And there's a lot of books coming out right now by people like how to be a badass and how to, do this better and that better and, how to have your confidence and whatnot. And mine is not that. I had been writing stories that were kind of observational for about a decade. And interestingly enough, I was one person on LinkedIn, one person on Facebook, one person at work, one person in my personal life, and not fully integrated anywhere. And the pandemic actually gave me the opportunity to just completely integrate and take all these stories because there's such an emphasis on humanity now and allowing for humanity. And these stories are just what it's like being a human being. And they're just a little escape. And so the timing worked out for me to put this book together to share with the world so that people can look at it and be like, oh my gosh, she did not do that. I have totally thought that and she did it. Or, cry with me, laugh at me. It's just the experience of being human.
Yeah, that's so cool. So the title is Weird Girl Adventures. Is that what it is?
Weird Girl Adventures. It's not a label. It's a lifestyle.
I love it. Talk about that. Like, how did that weird girl or the weird part of the whole title, where did that come from? And where did you get that?
I have a philosophy. And the philosophy is we are all weird, different weirding. I'm like the same dog, different paws. And I'm going to ask you this. Can you trace back to a moment in your life when you thought, oh my gosh, I am so weird?
Yeah, I probably can.
and how old were you, do you think?
Oh gosh, I was probably 13, maybe 12, 13. I don't know, something like that.
And can you remember what it was that made you think, oh my God, you don't have to say it, but can you remember what?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, for sure.
So my philosophy is that we can all trace back to a moment where we decided we were weird because weird doesn't know it's weird until it's judged, right?
Yeah.
So you walk around going, God, I'm so weird. Oh my God, what is wrong with me? Until somebody else judges it. And then what happens is some of us put that weird on like it's this itchy sweater, summer heat. And we've got this itchy sweater that says weird and we can't take it off. And so we can go around for years or decades wearing this sweater, this narrative that we're just weird. And then other people are like, I'm weird. I'm going to let my freak flag fly. Right.
Yeah.
And then other people are like, I need to find something else to cover up this sweater so that nobody sees it.
Yeah.
But when we allow our weird, and that means we don't have to embrace it, like it, or love it, we stop resisting it, right? And resistance sucks.
Yeah.
Out of resistance, in this place of neutrality, that's the starting point of possibility. We might be able to like it, love it, rock it, embrace it. But we can't go from resistance to love. It's like, okay, David, go run an Ironman if you haven't run 10 miles.
Right.
So how can we expect that from people? We forget that change is incremental, right? So everything is really, when I started allowing my weird, allowing myself to be me, it wasn't like, I love myself and I'm going to be me. It was stop hating yourself. Stop. Notice the noise and the language that you're using about yourself. Notice it, let it pass, and allow what's there to be there. And then that is like the starting point of possibilities.
Wow, that's really insightful. So it's really being able to, first and foremost, notice our uniqueness and notice who we really are at our core. How do we do that practically? And then like extrapolate that to like our work and how do we bring that to work? How do we bring our true, authentic selves to work, but also just really to life?
That's such an interesting question. And we are the ones that need to give our own selves the psychological safety, because work talks about, allowing individuality. And we all know that when people can be who they are, they do their best work. They perform well. So from the context of work, letting people be who they really are, using their gifts and talents means what? Bottom line optimization, right?
Yeah, right.
We can't exclusively create that for other people. We have to, as individuals, have our own agency, allow our own agency, and allow our own safety. And what that looks like for some people could be, through mindfulness, noticing the crap and the judgment and the baggage that we're carrying in to wherever we go. And, we all come into job interviews presenting ourselves in the best way possible, mitigating the risk, any kind of risk of anything bad, right?
Yeah.
So, and then what happens? We go into that workplace. Work is promising us this great environment where we have this awesome culture, where we can be ourselves, where we can fit in, where it's safe, and blah, blah, blah. And they're not showing up the way they say they are, but neither are we. So it's a both and everybody is responsible for it. So for me, it means the practice of mindfulness and noticing my own judgment towards myself and having the courage to take the risks. Knowing that if I don't risk being who I am in the context of work, that I am not going to perform at my best. It's on both parts and risk and it's all of our responsibility.
Yeah. Well, and it starts with, you said a word that, I know it comes from the mindfulness practice, but notice. And being able to notice. Speak into that for just a moment, because one of the things that I often will talk about with coaching clients is the ability to notice the stories that we tell ourselves in our head. And I'm curious how you begin that practice of noticing those thoughts, those things that we tell ourselves at work, relative to maybe it's imposter syndrome, maybe it's just not being authentically who we are.
There's a lot of pieces to that, because for me, the practice of self-awareness is directly tied into the practice of mindfulness. Like, self-awareness is how you are actually being, from the way you feel physically to the feeling tones to the thoughts and to the behaviors. And so there's a little bit of, the neural pathways and thought processes, and how do we interrupt them? We have to really get close to that whole entire process, right? And the only way we can really do that is by giving ourselves space, so that we can be observers of the way we make meaning, of the way that we think, and the way that we behave. And it could be through meditation. It could be through other contemplative practices. It could be through, I love to use rock music when I invite people to the practice of mindfulness. Like, whatever your favorite rock song is, can you hang your awareness on one instrument throughout the whole song, knowing that instrument will always be there when you get lost, right?
Yeah.
It's strengthening that noticing muscle, and it isn't magic. And I don't think it's a sign like, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? It's really this embodied practice. Because if it were that easy, we'd all have this sign in front of us that says, keep calm and carry on. And we'd be like, oh, duh,
Right.
It really is a practice. If you notice that you're not showing up in a way that's aligned with yourself, and you are pretty in tune with your body, you're going to notice it inside of yourself.
Yeah.
And you're going to notice that it's a feeling that you don't prefer to feel.
Yeah. I think it's interesting you talk about a practice, because I think that, like, one of the practices that I use for my own self is journaling. I love to be able to journal, just to be able to, like, see where my thoughts are and where they're leading me, and what the feeling of my thoughts are. And that practice has really helped me to get in tune with, I think, my authentic self as well. And so I think that that's one practice, or that's one way to be mindful. And it slows my mind down because I handwrite my journal. There's something magical that goes between our mind and our hand. And by doing that, it slows me down and it allows me that time and that space to be able to actually think and notice those things. Because I don't know about you, but I think that so oftentimes there are a lot of people that are just going 100 miles an hour, Mach 2 with their hair on fire, and they're not willing to slow down to notice those things.
Oh, yeah, not at all. And you know this about me. So I started out doing collage, and then I also taught myself to draw during the pandemic. So when I get into an overcrowded mind space, I art really hard. I draw and I listen to music. But one of the things that, you know, we're talking about is how to create that space. And so something that I'm putting together in a keynote is using WEIRD as an acronym.
Oh, cool.
So it's kind of the combination of all of us together and individually. So WEIRD is welcoming. Like, are we welcoming our own selves? Are we welcoming the thoughts that we have? Are we welcoming our own authenticity? Because if we don't, how can we collectively do that? And are we doing that for each other? Are we welcoming others to be who they are? You know, and then the E is engaging. How are we as a culture engaging individual point of view? Are we allowing? Are we listening? Are we giving space for individual points of view? Right. And the I is intentional. I mean, that's an obvious one. Is our intention to unite us with our differences rather than all our commonalities? Can we? Is there room for an I in us? So what's the intention with that? And the R is risk. What is the risk that you're willing to take to allow yourself to be you so that you don't compromise yourself? Because when you compromise yourself, you're not going to show up at your best. You're not going to perform at your best. And then on a collective level, as an organization, what risks are we really willing to take so that if something doesn't look like what we think it should, are we okay with that? Or are we okay with both? And then it's dynamic, and dynamic is fluid, and dynamic is energy. And it's, you know, are we as an individual, if we are authoring our own lives, if we're authentic, are we allowing ourselves to shift and change dynamically? And then as an organization, can we be dynamic around individuality and creating a culture that is built on allowing individuals to be who they are? So,
gosh, I love that acronym. I love the whole idea of really allowing each of us to be who we are, because when an organization does that, they become really so unique because of those people that make it up, that it really is the ultimate competitive advantage, if I'm being honest, because that unique set of human beings in that organization really creates the personality of the organization.
I agree. One of the things that I think is stopping us is that there's a blame thing going on. You know, if the culture's not providing it for me, the employee, then they're not doing their part. And then if the employee is not performing, it's on the employee. So there's a lot of blame going on when it's all about, when we all bear the responsibility for creating this. It can't just be leaders. You can create all the psychological safety in the world. If somebody doesn't allow it themselves, it's not going to matter. And I speak from truth. I speak from somebody who was a highly, highly stressed out employee who brought that into every situation and kept looking for the environment to fix me. I'm sorry, people, work is not your reparenting. It's not.
Yeah.
And so when we go into work expecting work to be our family, to reparent us, cannot put the blame, like, you know, how people blame their mothers for everything.
Right.
We can't blame work for what we don't allow ourselves to be.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful. That really is powerful. How do we practically bring this into the workplace? Like, how do leaders really create an environment that allows for this individuality and really allows for us to take risks and to be okay with knowing that, maybe we don't see eye to eye on certain things and maybe we're different. How do we practically do that?
That's a really loaded question. And I think one of the first things is courage, our own courage. And what risks are we willing to take? And my last name's Brown, and I wish I was related to the other Brown who talks about vulnerability.
Yes, yes.
Related to her.
Right.
So, obviously there has to be some parameters because it is in the context of work and there is an element of professionalism.
Yeah.
But in those confines, we need to look at ourselves from self-awareness standpoint, not what others tell us about ourselves, but from our own standpoint of self-awareness and know how we are showing up and seeing if we are willing to take risks at being a human being at work, at being vulnerable at work, at being mindful leaders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that starts with us. It starts with each individual, and each individual has to be able to take the time to get to know themselves, to become self-aware. And I think that some of the practices that you're talking about, mindfulness and maybe journaling and things like that, will help us to become better leaders. And then as we become better leaders and we're willing to step into the space where we do allow for individuality, that's going to create an environment and a culture of an organization that really allows for our weird, as you say, or our individual uniqueness,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I mean, if we asked people, hey, what do you consider to be weird? Everybody would have their own definition.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And you could put a picture of somebody. I mean, we all thought that Lady Gaga was weird in her white dress. And what do we think of Lady Gaga now? Holy cow, she is took the world by storm because we celebrate that.
Yeah.
The definition of weird, Merriam-Webster, is odd or fantastic. And we use that word weird all over the place, and we use it for odd. Or isn't that weird? You are so weird. Ew, so weird. And I have a TEDx that I'm doing, date TBD, called What If Weird Isn't Weird?
Very cool.
Yeah. But I define weird as the thoughts and the feelings that we believe separate us, that are actually our greatest connection to others, and that are actually how we can best serve one another.
Oh, Shelley, that is amazing. I love that. Say that again so that we really get that, because I think that that's really key. I love that.
Thank you. So it's weird are the thoughts and feelings that we believe separate us, that are actually our greatest connection to others. And better yet, they are what we can use to serve others.
Gosh, that is so cool. I think the key to that is that the things that we believe separate us, right? And so it's those beliefs, those mistaken beliefs, or those beliefs that really don't serve us, that we think that separate us, but really gives us the most opportunity to serve and to serve others.
Exactly. And let me ask you a question.
Sure.
That 13-year-old moment that you had.
Yeah.
Again, you don't have to say what it was.
Yeah.
Is there any element to that moment that you are now using in business to help others?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. As you say that, and I'm thinking back, it really is, I'm finding that moment is actually kind of translated into who I am today. And it's allowing me to be who really I authentically am.
Because we allowed the thing that we thought separate us to be the thing that connects us, the thing that we use to serve others.
Yeah, that's so good. Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. So let me just challenge our listeners to think of that time when you can look back, and just as Shelley asked me to look back and that time that you thought, you were weird, or that you had that moment that you felt like maybe you were separated or different. And what is it that you can use from that to be able to start to discover your own uniqueness and your own unique ability?
Yeah. In fact, I have a feature on my Instagram, and I feature 3 people a week, weird humans of the week.
Okay. Yeah.
And those questions: what is your weird?
Yeah.
How did you decide it was weird? How does it serve you?
Yeah.
And how does it serve others?
Yeah. That's really interesting.
You can always trace back that thing that you thought was so weird about yourself. It almost always ends up to be the way that you can serve others, or that you already do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting because as I think about it, I think that as I think about my own weird, my own uniqueness, I think that my uniqueness is that I have a sensitivity to others, and I think I'm fairly empathetic. And for a guy, for a man, I think that's a little bit different, or that's a little bit weird. And I think that for a long time, I thought that was something that is like, oh my, I'm so weird. I feel for other people, and I have this feeling. Guys aren't supposed to have that feeling, right? So that's where where my thought was.
Yeah.
But now, as a coach, as a facilitator, I'm able to really step into other people's shoes and really be able to connect with people in a way that maybe somebody else can't. And so that's allowing me then to serve in a way that I don't think I could have had I not been able to really discover that.
Yeah. It's funny. I feel the same way with curiosity.
Yeah.
Being a really curious kid, it was kind of weird. I was really kind of obsessed with trying to understand what it meant to be a woman, actually. Like, what does this whole thing mean? I've got like this feminist mom, and nobody else is a feminist where I live. And it's so strange, and I don't know what it means. And, it's just interesting. And my curiosity about like individuality and just people in general has served me too,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely has. Yeah. Well, I know that you've done some speaking, and throughout the pandemic, I know that's been a little bit, kind of on pause, or at least it's not been in person. But what's next for you? Like, as you launch this book, June 26th, I think you said it was June 22nd. As you launch the book, then what's next? Are you going to get back to some speaking now that, the pandemic is kind of starting to open up some of those things?
So yes, very much. That's my intention. I'm going to do the TEDx. Unfortunately, it's going to be virtual because it is an international TEDx and no way to go there now. But I really want to serve in the corporate arena to really extend this message that individuality is the key to inclusivity, and that it really is all of our responsibility. So it's my intention to go wherever I'm needed to invite to that message.
Well, I love that. And I think going back to something maybe that we talked about a little bit earlier, it's just that individuality is the strength of the organization. I think that is, if you are a leader and you're listening to this right now, that is the strength of your organization. And so how can you be that facilitator for people to really discover who they really are, and then utilize that to the best ability of the organization and for the best ability of that individual as well? I think that's what, as leaders, we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be able to help people discover themselves and put them in the right place so that they can be fruitful and really be fulfilled.
And give them resources to do so, because people are not reemerging and reintegrating into. Everybody's going to feel weird, depending on what the reintegration looks like. It's weird to be around humans.
It is.
And then if you think about re-engaging or re-emerging into the world of work, even partially together, everybody's weird. And they've had an opportunity for the last year and 3 months to be at home wearing pants, possibly, or possibly not, being themselves with their kids on Zoom. And people they're not going to tolerate being in situations where they can't, because they've had a full year and 3 months to be able to be themselves. And again, it's in the context of work. And I'm not a proponent of, okay, there's no context here for it.
Right.
It's about co-creating that context so that there's well-being and there's performance.
Yes, right. Well, and I'm sure that there are some leaders maybe that may be listening to this and are listening to this conversation who this is a really big shift for them. This is a really big thing for them to kind of shift their mind and kind of get their mind around. What do you say to those leaders? How do you help them to be able to kind of come on board? What's the best maybe first step for them?
I think it's recognizing that we can have both. We can have the what looks like us. We can have everything that we want that looks like us. But can we have something that looks different? And can it be both and? Can we exist with both and? Because we can't say we want something and then we invite it in and then we don't want it anymore because it doesn't look like A looks. B comes in, it doesn't look like it. So can it be both and exploring those biases that we have when it comes to individuality and knowing that our intention is a human one as well as an optimization one, because you can't have one without the other. I mean, that's just obvious.
Yeah. Well, and I so appreciate your framing that of a both and, because oftentimes we think of situations as binary. It's either this or that, but why not this and that? Being able to bring the two together and having multiple, options, so to speak. Yeah, no, I think that's really important. So it's really just challenging our biases, challenging the way we're looking at our people, looking at the way we're really leading our businesses as well, and allowing us to be able to have our individuality, but yet still be able to accomplish our mission. Yeah, I love that, Shelley. Well, Shelley, what's maybe like one thing that you want to tell us today that would just really help us to embrace our weird and to really, embrace that uniqueness of ourselves? Any like last thought here for us today?
Well, it's going to sound weird because I'm going to correct you.
Okay.
I don't think we can go from resisting to embracing. I think we forget that everything we do to learn something new is incremental.
Yeah.
So if it is incremental, going from point A to point Z means, that we have to go to B. And maybe that B is the space of allowing and not resisting before we can get all the way to embrace or love or wherever we think we should be.
Yeah.
The last thing is remember the word that I'm going to tell you right now, which you've heard before, is bullshould.
Yeah.
The space between where you are and where you think you should be is bullshould, and it causes should shaming. Yeah. So being where you are and allowing where you are to be where you are will open up possibilities of moving forward.
Gosh, Shelley, that's brilliant. It's exactly what we talk about here on the growth space, is that growth is incremental and it's one step at a time. So thank you for bringing that in. Absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing time with me today and sharing this conversation with the leaders that are listening. And tell us how we can get in touch with you, and tell us how we get a hold of the book as well.
Okay. So the book is really not like what we've been talking about here.
I know.
Funny observational, like if Glennon Doyle, Irma Bombeck, and Lucille Ball got together and mixed up a cake, I'd come out. And they're just funny, short little quirky stories, because I think there's a lot of how-to books in the world. Anyway, it's on Amazon.
Yeah.
I'm on LinkedIn. I also have a website, weirdgirladventures.com, and I'm on Instagram as well. And hopefully you'll be seeing me splashed all over the place very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and if you're on LinkedIn, for sure, reach out to Shelley. That's how she and I met.
Yes.
And yeah, she's just an amazing human being. And I hope all of our listeners will check out your book, because there are a lot of books on, growth and how to, but there are not a lot of books like you've written with stories of life stories and just being able to human stories. Yeah, absolutely. So I know it'll be really refreshing, and it'll be a refreshing read for folks. So Shelley, thank you for being on today.
Oh, thank you so much. It was my absolute pleasure.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. There were so many great takeaways for me. And one of the things that I think is so needed right now in just our community is just understanding and discovering our uniqueness. And it's discovering our weird, as Shelley says. And it's not just to be weird, or it's to discover our unique ability just for our own and our own purposes, but it's so that we can serve others. And I thought that was a really unique perspective. And I also loved the fact that we can have a both and kind of a mindset, that it's not just binary. It's not just this or that, but we can have this and that. That was really something I thought was a great takeaway as we really improve our mindset and build our growth. So be sure to go get Shelley's book, Weird Girl Adventures, and connect with her on Instagram and LinkedIn and all of the social platforms. I know you're going to really enjoy watching her growth and really getting into her book as well. Now, next week, I have the privilege of talking with another friend of mine who is a business owner and leader. He is a podcaster. He is a media person, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with him because he has grown so much and his company has grown so much over the past couple of years. And he's got a really great story. He's got some really great insights on growing a company. And you're not going to want to miss my conversation with Rich Cardona. So be sure to subscribe if you're not subscribed, and tune in next time so that you can hear that conversation with Rich. And until next time, keep getting out of your comfort zone and stay in that growth space. Bye for now.